Hi everyone, and welcome to Lessons from International Phenology Networks. We're just about to get started with an introduction from Emma, but I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before. I'm Aaron, and I'll be doing mostly behind the scenes things today. But I'd just like to welcome you all. Thank you all for coming. And if you would like to contribute towards discussions, we would really love to hear from you all today and to meet you all. So if you want to turn on your videos, you're very welcome to. And when the presenters are not presenting, you can also turn on your audio so we can hear you all. But if you'd prefer, there is also the option to chat through the chat function. And you're welcome to send a message to everyone, or you can send one individually to myself or a member of the steering group if you're having any issues as well. The steering group is made up of Emma Bush, who'll give you a wee wave, and Herve Memiaghe, and Bismarck Ofosu-Bamfo, and Asenath Adienge, and they're all present today, and hopefully you'll get to meet everyone. So a little bit about the format of the workshop. We have two speakers today. We have Theresa Crimmins and Geetha Ramaswami, and in that order, they're going to give us little presentations. So after each presentation, we'll have breakout discussions where each will kind of be split into smaller groups, and that'll give us a chance to reflect on the presentation and think about anything that the presentation has brought up for us. And then after that, we'll get back together as a group and we can share anything that we've been discussing in the smaller groups. And that'll also be an opportunity to ask any questions to the speaker. We'll also encourage you to introduce yourselves through the chat during Emma's introduction. We'd like to all know what you're up to, where you heard of the African Phenology Network, what you're keen to do, and if you have any lessons of your own as well to share, we would love to hear that. But for now, I'll pass across to Emma and she will give you all a formal introduction.
Great, thanks, Aaron. I'll just get the presentation sorted. Great, I trust you can all see that. Yeah, so good afternoon from Scotland, but I appreciate that it might be a very different time of day depending where you are in the world. Thanks for joining us for the second workshop of the African Phenology Network this summer. And some of you may have joined us for the last workshop. I'll just give a little recap of that in a minute if you didn't. So just to start with, a reminder that the health of our living planet depends on many tightly interconnected ecosystems and ecological processes. And as phenology scientists, we're particularly interested in the timing of recurring biological events, such as leaf out or insect emergence, fruit development, these kind of events that often happen seasonally and often trigger a whole cascade of interactions in ecosystems. And the study of this is called phenology. I'm sure many of you are attending today because you're familiar with this. And phenology is considered an essential biodiversity variable and has been described in IPCC reports as one of the most important aspects to monitor in ecosystems, because the timing of these seasonal biological events are very highly sensitive to climate change. And just as an example of that, coming out of Africa itself, we recently published data from Lope National Park showing a massive reduction in fruit availability in a tropical forest site since the late 1980s until today. And this site has seasonal abundance of fruit during sort of rainy seasons, and with much less fruit available as animals and come to expect fruit at that time of the year. You know, we've got loads of questions coming out of this research as to how the rest of the ecosystem and people who depend on the forest are going to be impacted by this this change. And there's strong evidence that this has occurred because of change in the climate at the site. And to successfully adapt to these changes, it's becoming clear that African decision makers need much better ecological information on which to make decisions. So that brings us to the African Phenology Network. This is a recent research network that's been formed by a few of us that are here today, and currently you can follow our activities on our Twitter feed, and you can see through our website the things that we've been doing. The dots on this map represent metadata that we store and make available for sites which are doing phenology monitoring in sub-Saharan Africa, and there are many more that we would love to be represented on this map. So if you're not represented there, then please get in touch with us to see how we can include your details. So just to recap, like the main aims of the African Phenology Network are to support research collaborations. We have some history of this in publishing first inter-site comparisons of phenology for tropical trees, but there's so much potential here for developing research collaborations between sites. Another aim is to widen access and establish new methods. We're really interested in improving access to technological data collection methods in Africa, and certain members of the steering group are really leading on that, whether that's collecting data through mobile phones or using phenocams, etc. Growing new leadership in this field. So this is the steering group, as already introduced by Aaron. It's myself and 3 other colleagues who are on this call today, and we are all early career researchers working to develop research that is associated with phenological monitoring. And finally, the main aim of all the work that we're doing is to provide really good data to support a thriving planet. So providing that data to decision makers to make long-term sustainable decisions for how we interact with ecosystems in sub-Saharan Africa. So specifically, this is our first project that we have been funded for. So the Royal Society Edinburgh has funded us for 6 months as part of a project leading up to COP26, the climate change conference this November that's happening in Glasgow, Scotland. And the aim of this project is to rapidly assess capacity for phenological monitoring in sub-Saharan Africa to aid climate adaptation. And through these series of workshops and ongoing activities, we're hoping to make recommendations that we will present to the Africa delegation at COP26. So just to recap, in the workshop last month, we heard from various colleagues on their perspectives on phenology monitoring on the African continent. So we heard about long-term monitoring at Lope National Park, which has been going on for 34 years and is ongoing. We heard about the use of phenology monitoring in agroforestry work in Kenya, where we heard from colleagues at KEFRI and the UK CEH. And we also heard from our very own Bismarck about his new research in Ghana and how he is using technology to aid the development of his research program. So this week we wanted to invite people to come and speak to us from other international networks. So with the network development for the African continent, we don't want to make mistakes that other people might already have made and learnt from, and we also want to think about what the context is in African nations and what we can borrow from other people who have been doing phenology monitoring for a lot longer. So we're very fortunate today to be hearing from Theresa Crimmins, who's director of the USA National Phenology Network, and Geetha Ramaswami, who is project manager at the at India's SeasonWatch. So they will tell us much more about the phenology work that they're involved with, and we're very grateful to be hearing from them today. And I just wanted to leave us now with some questions that I've been thinking of leading up to this workshop that I think we can all be thinking about together as we hear these presentations, and maybe we can take these questions into the breakout rooms and into the final discussion. So firstly, what should be the main research aims for coordinated phenology monitoring in Africa? Obviously, we're all thinking about the impacts of climate change on ecosystems, but I guess most specifically in this context for African nations, what should be the main research aims? Secondly, which are the best approaches for monitoring in this context? So when you're listening to what's going on in the USA or India, which approaches can we borrow and develop in the African context? 3, is monitoring best organized at national or continental level? So obviously we're hearing from 2 national level networks, and we're currently talking about, you know, the whole of Africa, which is obviously huge. And we've been thinking as a steering group, should this be better as a network of national networks, and how would we build up that infrastructure? Fourthly, should the African Phenology Network develop citizen science monitoring? There aren't a huge amount of examples that I know of in the African context. Maybe people here could share those with us if you know of examples. And finally, who are likely to be the main beneficiaries of phenology research in African nations, and how do we make information available to them? So I'll copy these questions into the Zoom chat when we get to the breakouts, and maybe we can be thinking about those as we go along. So I will stop sharing now, and Aaron, if you could prepare Theresa's presentation, I will hand over to Theresa.
Okay, just checking everyone can see that, yeah?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Theresa Crimmins. I'm the director for the USA National Phenology Network, and I'm excited to share with you some of the lessons we've learned over 14 years of supporting science, management, and outreach through phenology monitoring. The USA National Phenology Network was established back in 2007 with the primary aims of collecting, storing, and freely sharing data and information about when events like leaf out, flowering, migration, etc. occur across the country from year to year. And we make these data and information products readily available to support decisions anywhere from natural resource management decisions like invasive species management, to human health issues like allergies and the spread of disease, to even supporting tourism, things like anticipating major wildflower blooms or leaf color change events. We also make these data available to support scientific discovery, communicating about climate change and phenology and how phenology is changing. And finally, one of our aims is to grow an equitable network across the country. So today I'm going to share just a few quick lessons that we've learned over the years about how to ensure that the data coming in are of the best rigor and quality that we can achieve. And also on the data outside of things, how we can ensure that the data and information that we have are being used as widely and broadly as possible. Our lessons learned on the data inside of things are to ensure that our observation protocols are rigorous and clear, to thoroughly communicate with our volunteer observers to keep them happy as much as possible. And finally, groups of observers, which we term local phenology programs, are good. So on the data inside of things, on the rigorous protocols, we run a program called Nature's Notebook. This is our citizen science or community science program that's intended for folks of nearly all skill and age levels to be able to contribute what they're seeing in their yards. We have observation protocols available for over 1,400 different species of plants and animals. And we primarily utilize mobile apps, since that's the main way that folks tend to like to document things these days. And we really work hard to offer extensive and readily accessible training materials and support to keep folks, again, happy and help answer questions that might be tripping them up. So the status and intensity protocols, what that means is that every time that an individual is going out and making an observation on a plant, they are reporting yes or no to a series of questions about what they are seeing. And if they answer yes to one of the questions, they are then prompted with a subsequent question of how many or how much. And so as an example, I have just a snippet of the protocol for redbud, which is the tree that you're seeing on the right here. One of the questions that you are faced with every time you go out to your redbud tree is, do you see flowers or flower buds? And if you're not sure, there's a couple of sentences that describe that, and those are intended to really help non-experts be able to understand whether they see that thing or not. You look at your plant, you answer yes or no. In this case, I'm going to say, yes, I do see flowers or flower buds. And then the observer's prompted with how many flowers are present. And then you're given that choice of a number of different categories. Similarly, you're then prompted with, do you see open flowers? How do you know? Here's the description of it. Hopefully that enables you to be able to evaluate whether you see open flowers or not. And if you answer yes, then there are a series of choices for what percentage of the flowers on that tree are open. Another thing that we've learned is the importance of communicating regularly and thoroughly with our observers, to thank them for their participation, to show them what their data are saying once they report it, to demonstrate that people are using it, and to report back with them what the findings are that are emerging with those observations. And finally, one of the things that we've learned is that trying to engage individuals is challenging and is worthwhile. But if we can tap into networks of individuals that are already doing something together anyways, things like groups of docents or volunteers at natural resource areas or national parks, or even classrooms, taking advantage of that existing infrastructure, inviting the whole group to participate, that yields even more data from a particular site, and usually for a longer period of time. And so we have invested a lot in cultivating that model of local phenology programs. And what this graph is showing is that over the years, we've seen a much greater amount of data coming in from those groups than we are seeing from just individual observers across the country. Then on the data outside of things, we have learned that we need to make sure that the data are accessible through a number of different mechanisms, that it's valuable to offer both those raw data as well as more derived products, to deliver those products straight into the hands of the users, and then continually listen to those users' needs to help shape new and additional products. So on the data access side of things, we have a number of menu-driven query tools. This is one of the tools that you can use to query and pull down, extract data directly from the database. You can query based on date range, location, species, etc., and it downloads an Excel file for you. For even more savvy users, we have an R package, and we have extensive documentation to support this as well. But for folks who are not as comfortable querying and downloading and then manipulating raw data themselves, we also have an online visualization tool that doesn't require you to touch any data. You simply click through what it is you're interested in plotting, and you can pretty readily generate maps, plots, and comparisons across sites, years, and species to be able to see what's in there. And this is great for observers to be able to see where their data are going and what they are showing. Another thing that we've learned is to not just make those raw data available, but also more derivative products is very important for engaging the news media and casting a wider net for the messages. So for example, this map product is indicating whether the start of spring phenology is occurring earlier or later across the country. This is from this past spring in 2021. And the regions that are shaded red had the start to spring occur much earlier than average. And then locations that are blue saw a later start to spring. And we have had a lot of media interest in these particular products because it resonates with folks, and it's just simpler to understand than trying to look at graphs and plots of some of the more raw data. Another thing that we've learned is to not only expect that folks will come to our website to find products, but to deliver the information into the hand of the users as well. And so, for example, we have a number of forecast products that we call pheno-forecast maps, which indicate when a particular phenological event is expected to occur. And we narrow these down to events that actually are management relevant. So in this case, this is a map for adult emergence in emerald ash borers, which are important problematic insects that managers are trying to control. And what we do is this forecast on a daily basis updates and shows where those insects are expected to emerge. But observers can either come to our website and see those maps, or they can sign up to receive email-based notifications which will prompt them at the proper time to go take the management action that is necessary because of the emerging state of that particular insect. The final thing that we've really learned is the importance of listening to users of these data and data products and going through an iterative process of trying to understand their needs, trying to identify if there is a particular information product or kind of packaging of phenology information that is of value to them, mocking it up, seeking their feedback, putting it into production, seeking their feedback, and continually touching back with end users to see if what we have created is actually of value. And what you're seeing here is a forecast that indicates when managers should expect to go out and treat in buffalo grass, which is an invasive grass here in Southwest US, based on when it's greening up. Thank you so much. I very much look forward to discussing these things further, and I really appreciate your time.
Great, thanks, Theresa, for obviously that was a pre-recorded presentation, but it's great to have you here. Would you like to say hello?
Sure, thank you. Yes, I put my introduction in the chat as the rest of you have been doing, but what I said there was that I'm very excited and honored to be here, honestly. Excited to share what we've learned. I'm the director for the USA National Phenology Network, and I've been with the network since pretty much the beginning when it was established in 2007. And I'm also a research scientist, and my research primarily focuses on plant phenology in water-limited systems.
Great. Well, what we're going to do right now is Aaron is going to magically put us all into breakout rooms. Hopefully, if you are a French speaker and would prefer to be in a French speaking group, you have let Aaron know so he can organize that. And we're just going to have, I think it's like 8 or 9 minutes just to discuss together. I'm going to put some questions that I put up at the end of my presentation. Yeah, they've missed out the numbers for some reason. So if you could think about those questions in relation to what Theresa just shared with us, that would be really great. But also, especially in this first breakout, if you just want to go around and introduce yourselves to each other, that's also fine. And you've got a second breakout after Geetha's presentation, so we can come back to those questions and we'll come back to them again at the end. So magic us away, Aaron. Okay, I'll just wait a minute for everyone to come back from their various breakout rooms. Okay, is that everybody back from breakouts now? Great, we had a few technical issues in our breakout room, so we were just using the general chat to discuss with each other. Does anybody have a question that they would like to pose directly to Theresa if you weren't in a breakout room with her? Feel free, if you're able to put on your video right now. It's lovely to see people's faces. I understand that might be a challenge for your internet connection. So if you put your hand up, if you have a question directly for Theresa. Is there anyone? Yeah, Geetha.
Thanks so much for that talk, Theresa. It was really lovely to listen to that. I'm very curious about how the community responds to data products. So the maps and the graphs and all the data products that are available as resources, how many people actually use those, and what is their response? Because we tend to not get a response on data products.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. We identify a number of different audiences that we are trying to engage, and we try to think about, what it is we're trying to communicate to these different messages. The map products that I showed there are the first ones. The kind of that map that was blue to red that showed whether spring was earlier or later is really kind of intended probably for very broad use, because the thinking that went into that was, how can we communicate that bit about what the current conditions are like in a way that hopefully folks understand intuitively, without having to really dig deeper and understand what's behind it. And it actually has resonated quite a bit. We were kind of surprised when we first started generating those products. It happened to coincidentally be an extremely early, like really early spring here. And it was really kind of the perfect storm where we put these products out there and suddenly it was telling the story of what was happening in a way that even the news media could really understand. And it went viral that year. It was in all of the major newspapers and even on TV that year. And so that was helpful for us because it really kind of, I think, pushed us up into the zone of recognition. Prior to that, nobody knew who the heck we were. I still think most people don't know who the heck we are, but that was a good, it helped. And so I think it helped pave the way for us to start to make and deliver additional data products, and ones that are a little more maybe nuanced or take a little more thought to understand and interpret. And a lot of the other ones, like the pheno forecast maps, the ones that are indicating, say, when an insect may be hatching, and so that you can go out and trap at the most effective time. Those are definitely accessed by a much smaller number of people because the information that they're conveying is much more specialized. It's still a challenge for us when we release a new data product to get the word out to the folks that we think are the proper audience, and thereby encourage adoption of it. The best ways that we have found to achieve that has been to share via social media. So we try to cultivate social media, and it's primarily Twitter and Facebook. And then we also try now that we've had things published in newspapers and been on TV, we have those journalists' names, and I try not to abuse that contact information, but we do reach out to them when we have something, because they are a conduit for getting stuff out through their mechanisms. And then depending on who the audience is, we try to leverage either blogs or newsletters for different organizations. Say for like some of our products are really intended for use by folks that are caring for trees. And so we've tried to work through the professional organizations of arborists and tree care specialists and integrated pest management folks. We'll try to send stuff through there. We'll ask if we can write for their newsletter or for their blog. And so it's just, trying to identify who the audience is, and then working backwards to try to identify how do those folks get their information. Is it either through a professional society or something else? And then, try to find a way to get that information into that channel, into their hands. Yeah. I don't really have a way to know whether the adoption has been good or not, because I don't know what good is, but that's what we've kind of landed on so far.
I mean, it seems obviously really a straightforward way to think about it, but I found it really helpful in your presentation about splitting out the data in issues and the data out issues. And that was a really helpful way of thinking about it. I think would be useful in our context as well. I'm just going to have to pause us there to move on with the schedule, but I just had something I wanted to ask. So if you could think about this and answer at the end, Theresa, and I'll ask Geetha as well. How much does it cost, and how are you funded? Basically, like you're sharing these great online portals, and I guess just the nitty gritty of like, how do you put that together? I also saw in the news maybe that you were having some funding challenges. So I don't want to step on a sensitive topic there, but obviously thinking about, it's always a difficulty to get research funding in the long term consistently. So your thoughts on that at the end would be really great. I'm just going to hand over to Herve in a minute to introduce Geetha. Could I just encourage anyone, if they have further questions for Theresa, to put them in the chat, and I'm sure she will try and answer them. Or if they're general questions for us to come back to at the end, start sharing them in the chat so I can look over them before the end. Okay, Herve Memiaghe, I'll hand over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Herve Memiaghe. No, I'm from Gabon, but currently I'm doing my PhD on the human-wildlife coexistence based on phenology at USA National Park in Gabon. So I will be introducing the second network that we have the opportunity to listen today, which is the SeasonWatch. So Geetha will try to also give us some experience from her perspective in this organization. Aaron, can you share the presentation, please? Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Geetha Ramaswami and I'm Program Manager at SeasonWatch, which is an all-India citizen science network monitoring tropical tree phenology. Thank you to the African Phenology Network for giving me this opportunity to present this project at this forum. SeasonWatch was established in the year 2010 with the dual purpose of filling knowledge gaps in the phenology of widespread tropical tree species of India, and also to motivate citizens to go outdoors and interact with the nature in their neighborhoods. Over the past 11 years or so, we have received more than 450,000 observations on more than 94,000 trees. Nature enthusiasts contribute this information, as do students and teachers from schools. There are more than 1,200 such individuals and more than 1,200 such schools associated with SeasonWatch. Observers contribute information either on our website or on our Android phone app. And all the data that comes into the project is available as summaries on our Explore page, such as the one that you see over here in this image. To ensure that the data coming into SeasonWatch is accurate, we have designed a protocol that is very simple for people to follow and is also applicable across age groups and easily adaptable across age groups. We either train volunteer observers directly through workshops, or we provide video tutorials over our social media handles that people can look up and start observing. This tree over here is a Butea monosperma tree, and a tree like this is ideal for observation for SeasonWatch, and this is because the canopy of the tree is visible from all angles. When an observer finds an ideal tree like this to observe, they register it with the project and then monitor it regularly every week and contribute phenophase information on such trees. Every week, the observer is expected to go to the tree, divide the canopy into thirds, and then look for fresh leaves, mature leaves, dying leaves, buds and open flowers, and ripe and unripe fruits on the tree, and report the quantity as being none, few, or many, depending on whether it was present on the tree, whether it was present in only 1/3 of the tree, or present in more than 1/3 parts of the tree. The observers can optionally also contribute information on frugivores, pollinators, and herbivores that they saw on the tree during this observation. Now, depending on where people are contributing information from, we have a total of 135 species that can be observed across the country. However, some species get observed much more often than other species, and these tend to be species that are either culturally important or have products that are used by people. So the top species that is currently observed for SeasonWatch is Artocarpus heterophyllus, or the jackfruit, and the fruit is used in cuisine and cooking across the country. The second most popular species is Mangifera indica, or mango, again a very beloved summer fruit. The third and the fourth species are Tamarindus indica and Philanthus indica, both also species that are used in cuisine as well as for medicine. So Artocarpus heterophyllus at present has more than 50,000 observations across the past 6 years. When species information such as this is collated over many years and over many seasons, we are able to make a map or chart of the seasonality of such trees. For example, over here, we have the seasonality chart for Mangifera indica or mango. On the x-axis here, you can see the month of the year. And on the y-axis is the percentage of tree showing a particular phenophase, either leaf, flower, or fruit. Here we observe that mango has leaf nearly throughout the year, and 80% of the trees have leaf nearly throughout the year. And there is a peak in flowering in the months of February and March, and there's a peak in fruiting in the months of April and May. Now, the temporal pattern of seasonality can be affected by where the information is coming from. And in SeasonWatch, there is a spatial bias in the observations that come in. For example, the southernmost state of Kerala in India contributes 3 times more information than other states that contribute information from India. So there's this south bias in the data that comes into SeasonWatch. And this in turn affects the temporal seasonality patterns that we observe for species. In order to separate the latitudinal patterns from the temporal patterns of phenology, we also did an assessment of data that came in through 4 BioBlitz events. A BioBlitz event is basically a biodiversity event where observers go out and observe everything that they can in the vicinity and report that in a short period of time. We conducted 4 such phenology BioBlitz events in December 2018 and March, June, and September 2019. And we plotted these observations across the India map to see what are the latitudinal patterns. So here you can see that the gray dots are all trees that were observed across all events, and the yellow dots are corresponding to the fruiting trees that were observed in each season. In December, only southern India was reporting fruiting trees, and by March, the fruiting had spread to peninsular India. And in June was when maximum fruiting was reported from across the country. And by September, again, the fruiting had receded back into southern parts of India. So there's a clear latitudinal pattern in the fruiting of this species across India. Apart from such interesting observations, our goal is also to understand larger scale phenomena such as climate change and how that affects the seasonality of trees. Now, an exercise such as this is easy if there is historical data available for phenology of trees, and that is compared to contemporary phenology. However, in India, we do not have systematic records of historic phenology of even the most commonly observed or most widespread of species. So we in turn have realized that we can use cultural references instead of historically collected information to compare contemporary changes in phenology. For example, these three species that you see on the screen here, Butea monosperma, Azadirachta indica, and Maduka longifolia, are all culturally important trees and are associated with particular seasons and particular change in seasons, and are often also associated with regional festivals across India. Anecdotally, people are now observing that the flowering and fruiting in species such as these are not the same as what their parents or their grandparents were observing. So culturally and anecdotally, there seems to be a shift in the flowering phenology of certain types of species. We wondered if we could actually test this using SeasonWatch data. And for one particular species, which is Cassia fistula or Kanikonna, we had enough information to actually compare a cultural baseline against contemporary phenology. Cassia fistula is a very culturally beloved tree in the southern state of Kerala and is associated with the Kerala New Year, which typically falls between the 13th and 15th of April every year. Over the past 5 or 6 years or a decade or so, people have been reporting that the flower of the species, which used to peak around the same time as the Kerala New Year, is currently becoming less and less available. So much so that people have to now substitute this species for other yellow flowered species or buy from the market or substitute it with plastic flowers. And this cultural observation led us to examine whether actually the historically known cultural baseline of flowering in the species in the second week of April has shifted to a prior date or has become erratic. For this, we looked at all the trees that were recorded across Kerala, and we plotted the either the presence of flower or the flowering peak across the different weeks of the year. And compared it against the expected flowering peak, which is in the 15th week of the year. We observed that people were actually observing an erratic flowering pattern where there was a peak at the expected time, but there was also scattered flowering nearly throughout the year. And peak flowering, in fact, was happening just a little bit before the expected peak. We are constrained by sample size and also the reliability of repeated observations in the case of this particular species. But this is a slight indication that the cultural baseline, the cultural expectation of this species flowering at a certain time is now changing. The contemporary phenology patterns for the species may be changing. And we would like to explore this further by finding out correlations with other environmental factors that may be changing over space and time, such as temperature and precipitation. So not only is SeasonWatch a repository for data, but we also firmly believe that this project has motivated people to spend more time outdoors. This is especially important in the current day and age where, pandemic aside, children do not have the opportunity in India to really go outdoors and interact with nature during their school hours. And SeasonWatch actually provides this opportunity. It provides the opportunity for amateur naturalists to go and observe interactions that happen between trees and other organisms in their neighborhood. And we think that this is a great educational opportunity for citizens at large. I would like to end this talk here and thank all of our regional partners, Mathrubhumi Seed, SEST Meghalaya, Foundation for Ecological Security, and Keystone Foundation that take the lead on training citizen scientists from across India and collate and contribute information to the Citizen Science Project. If you would like more details or summary of this talk, you can find it in our preprint here. Thank you once again. Thanks Africa Phenology Network for this opportunity.
Thank you, Geetha. I think you are here. I don't know if you want to add something before we move to the second room discussion.
Thank you, Herve. Yeah, I just would like to thank everyone for attending this, and thanks again to Africa Phenology Network for this opportunity. It's great to be here and to discuss different perspectives from everyone.
Yeah. Before moving to another to the other room meeting, so I have just a very quick question. I saw that you have all the plot through the India. How do you manage the data? How it is efficient that you are getting the data on time everywhere?
The Bio Blitz events are curated such that we get information from across the country, and we promote it through social media and try to get out as much of the word as possible. And we also provide resources like tutorials on how to join the project. And it's often great fun for people to participate in such events because it's like a race. And we also sometimes have prizes at the end of it. So it's great fun for people to participate. So once we announce a project like this, we typically get responses on those 3 or 4 days for which the event is scheduled. So it's mostly just getting the word out that helps us get the information in.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Iron, if you can send people to different rooms. Yeah, if everyone are back to the main room, we can, I don't know if people have still question for Geetha before we move to the next presentation.
I did actually have something that I wanted to ask, Geetha. So because citizen science is quite a big part of SeasonWatch, I wondered, and I do wonder this in general with citizen science projects, because I've never really been that close to any of them. Do you have any kind of verification process, or do you tend to just kind of trust in the materials that you provide to people when, you know, when the data comes through?
Right. So ideally, citizen science project would have a great training program and also a verification system once the data has come in. So right now we have a training program, but we don't have a post, upload data verification process.
Mm-hmm.
But we are in the process of working a system out where, we can automate perhaps potentially erroneous observations. We haven't implemented that yet, but it's in the works. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Verification is extremely important to ensure that the data quality is really high.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely trust is a huge thing over here. We trust the citizens to be uploading the correct data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Geetha, you have another question for the chat. Well, the question is, do you have a standard like the Darwin Core or especially for phenology data?
Actually, we do not have a standard per se. No, not really. But Vijay, would you like to suggest something that we could potentially follow?
I don't have a direct suggestion as such, but it will be really good because then, like, SeasonWatch can talk to NPN directly and kind of compare similar kind of species. Because otherwise, currently, if we need to talk to African Phenology Network or NPN or anyone, it's going to be really difficult because we need to spend a lot of time converting that data, kind of making compatible with each other. But it will be really useful to have. I mean, we can derive some format and then use it so that anyone interested in phenology can like start following that, and this kind of exchange will be really seamless.
Sure. Are you aware of any existing standards for phenology? Or anyone?
I don't know. I mean, I have not worked much, but maybe others have some insights in that.
Yeah, I'll chime in here, Ellen, at the USA National Phenology Network. But I'm also working with a group that is developed a plant phenology ontology to do exactly what you're talking about. And we have a global portal that's sort of a proof of concept. It doesn't have a lot of data in it. And we're writing a proposal to get more funding to kind of expand that. But there is this plant phenology ontology, and I will put that in the chat in a sec when I'm done talking, because I can't multitask like that. I'm too old. And then, yeah, as far as the Darwin Core, this is not really my area of expertise, but I was in a conference where they were talking about specifically the people that maintain Darwin Core, specifically adding a field for phenology, and I'm not sure where that is right now, but I will put this.
Emma, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I can do, if I don't want to take away from someone else as everyone else asked their questions.
I think you are the next. After you, it will be Bismarck. I have also a question.
Okay. Yeah, Geetha, I was really interested to see that your citizen science program includes mango, because I've often thought that this would be a great species to attempt to monitor globally within the tropics. But I don't know much about mango. Is it just one species, or is there lots of different genetic strains of it that have ended up in different parts of the world. Do you think it could, could your protocol be expanded throughout, the African American tropics and do a global mango watch?
So as far as I'm aware, Mangifera indica is one species, but just within the Indian subcontinent, there are hundreds of varieties of mango, which tend to have different seasonality. And also some varieties are likely to be found in certain regions. So it's also region specific, what variety you find where. But it's a highly seasonal species, I think, everywhere, because across the country, irrespective of the precipitation regime or temperature, mango is pretty seasonal and it flowers and fruits only in a certain season. So I guess it would be a great species to monitor across the tropics. I don't know if anyone else has an opinion on this. Maybe
Geetha, I just wanted to add that, there's also this in the Northeast. I don't know about the exact distribution, but I think it could be there in parts of Southeast Asia. There's this Mangifera sylvatica, which in the Northeast, we call it wild mango. And that might be also an interesting species to monitor because I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mangifera indica now, I'm really wondering whether there are any truly wild populations. I mean, of course, protected areas there might be, but I feel that all of them are sort of planted, cultivated. Is that true or not?
I have observed wild mango in some forests.
Indica.
Yeah, indica.
Okay, right.
Yeah, even I have seen some like very wild and old trees in Western Ghats, which are Mangifera indica and they're wild.
Okay. Right.
I mean, I think I've discussed this idea for a few years with people, and you can already see the excitement that this is, generating in the chat, because mango is so loved and so recognizable and so culturally relevant across the tropics now. It's been spread everywhere. That I really think it could be quite it could be a collaboration between us, from these different continents to do something.
Absolutely.
And Mango Watch sounds like a lovely name for it.
Yeah. I also wondered as well, because thinking about alternative sources of information, there's a mango industry. Can we get hold of sales records of mango to go back over the years to see peak mango production and those kind of things? Anyway, maybe further discussion between interested people.
Okay, Bismarck, I have a question about the species identification. Bismarck, do you still want to ask your question?
Yes, my question has to do with whether they have challenges with plant identification.
Yes, we certainly do have challenges with plant identification. But thankfully, the most observed species are also species that people use nearly on a daily basis. So it's unlikely that those species will be misidentified. But the rarer species may be species that people are not used to observing on a daily basis. We often get queries. We get a picture or a description, and people ask us if they can. If we can help identify it for them. For the SeasonWatch species, we have a species page on the website where people can quickly cross-reference with a representative image and some description for the species. And we also provide the local name for the species whenever available. So people tend to know the local name of the species, and so they can sort of cross-match those reference points and do the identification. But yeah, sometimes we do get strange species being reported in strange places. So that is why we need a proper verification process after the data has come in.
Geetha, may I add to this answer?
So do you sometimes have to perhaps go to some specific locations for specimen to confirm the IDs, or you would work with pictures? Because I would imagine that a place like India, being in the tropics as well. Having some tropical climate will have very high diversity. And so perhaps some species could be mistaken for others.
Sure, but most of our participants, are reporting things from their own gardens or from their locality, from cities, from avenues. So it's very unlikely that they'll be misidentifying those species. But yeah, Sai wanted to add.
Yeah, I was going to say that social media plays a good role in identification. We get a lot of people who message us with photos, like Geetha mentioned, and we also have been doing this, short infographics of trees, which gives like photos and textual information about how to identify a tree. So that also I think helps people come to a very definite conclusion on identifications.
Thank you, Getty and Saishi. And I want just to add before giving the floor again to Emma that mango is not only interesting for us, but it seems that in Gabon, mango are very attractive to elephant. And the issues that people have been reporting is like the seasonality are changing. Sometimes mango tree used to produce 2 times a year, and sometimes now we just produce 1 time a year. I don't know if you have the same pattern in India, but that is like, it would be good maybe one day to have this mango watch over the tropical. So Emma, if you want, you can take the floor again.
Yes, sure. So we just have 10 minutes left in this hour and a half. I think I'm just going to pose a question about funding to both Theresa and Geetha, because it came up again in my breakout group, and I think it's something that's of interest to us. And then we'll just have a couple of comments from Bismarck on behalf of the African Phenology Network. And then I've got a couple of places to signpost you all to at the end. And then if anyone wants to stay and continue chatting, we can hold the room open, I think. But just in case anyone needs to leave at 1:30, we'll try and stick to that. Theresa, if you start, how are you funded? How have you found that? How much does it cost to support what you do?
Sure. So we have had a budget, we've been extremely fortunate, of close to $1 million a year for the last many years. And that has funded a pretty large team compared to other programs. And I realize that sounds probably like huge. In the past, I explained briefly in our breakout groups, we've had a team anywhere from 10 to 12 professionals working on it. And that's primarily been IT folks who have built the website, the database, and then the various workflows for processing the data products. And then there's a lot of IT maintenance that goes into that. Also the establishing the protocols and the infrastructure for collecting the data. So that's another person, that's Ellen primarily. And then at various times, different folks involved in communicating with different different communities that are involved in perhaps using the data products and giving us feedback on what they would like to see, as well as folks that are interfacing with the scientific community to hear what their needs are and help shape things. As you mentioned, we have faced some funding challenges as of late. So our funding, for the most part, the majority of it has come from a particular agency within the federal government. And we've had, if you followed politics in the country, our former president was not a fan of climate change or science in general, and really kind of pulled back on funding that was going to the agency that was supporting us. And so we kind of suffered from that as well. And as a consequence, our team has shrunk down now. We're still very fortunate to have 6 professionals on our staff. Not everybody's full-time, but it's 6 individuals. And then because we sit at a university, we're fortunate to be able to also have graduate and undergraduate students work with us too. So that kind of increases the pool of talent that we can draw from. We've spent, because of the challenges with support, we've spent a lot of time in the last year and a half looking at other options for support, research grants, private foundations, donations from wealthy individuals, privatization and charging for things, so going the for-profit route. The conclusion I've kind of come to is those are all options for diversifying our funding and increasing support, but that ultimately long-term sustained observation networks really do need some sort of permanent commitment from, I think, a federal entity. So we're doing everything we can right now to reinstate that. And our efforts are both at the level of influencing the decision makers at the highest level of government, as well as going back to that agency that had funded us prior and trying to demonstrate that what we do really is very important. And very thankfully, our current president does value climate change and climate change research and science. And so we're now making that argument that what we do actually aligns very well with those priorities. And so I think in the shorter term, meaning in the next few years, we'll probably be in better shape, but yeah, it's a bit of a bumpy road. And yeah, it's just, it truly is not insignificant to achieve the level of funding that it takes to undertake those activities to engage folks across a large geographic area and then maintain those data and maintain the tools to make them readily available to the different end users. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. I mean, I know that in our discussions with my colleagues here in the steering group and things, you know, we often come back to, well, funding grants and things are not enough because they're such short term, your maximum 5 years or something. So it really has to be government commitment. But obviously your example says that even that, you know, can be at the whim of politics, but does seem to be like the most sustainable thing we can come across. But it's how, I guess, how do we present that within various contexts, you know? Okay, we're talking about vastly different sums of money that would be sent to research in countries not the USA, but you know, governments are funding things, and it's a lot about choice, isn't it? And convincing decision makers that actually this is a really valuable thing to be funding long term. Geetha, would you like to share your perspective on that and experience?
Yes, we are always short on funds, and we would always welcome more funds. Actually, we're a really small team right now, and that is primarily because we don't have enough funds to support a larger team. And I just did a conversion to dollars for our budget, and I think we have a budget of only $40,000 US a year, and there's 4 full-time staff and some part-time staff, and most of us, you know, wear multiple hats. We perform various things. We're all Swiss Army knives doing various things. The same person is doing 3 different tasks, you know, and that's maybe not a very efficient use of our skills either. And yeah, it would be great if we had more funding. So currently we are supported by Wipro Foundation, which is an IT company, and it's their CSR wing. And they have been supporting us for the past 10 years. Right now, we are also looking to diversify and get funding from other sources. So we are applying to government grants, the Indian government grants, applying to other CSR initiatives. Oh, sorry, CSR is corporate social responsibility. If that is not a common term, CSR is I guess for India. So yeah. So these are our sources of funding, and yeah, we'll really appreciate it if there are any ideas, any other sources that we can potentially look into, and it'll be great if you guys have suggestions. Please do let us know.
Great, thank you. That's really interesting, thinking about partnering with a company through their yeah, that's a really interesting idea. Okay, just looking at the time, I'm just going to ask Bismarck to give a couple of thoughts, summing up some couple of key points that we might want to take away for the African Phenology Network. I just asked him to do this 5 minutes ago because unfortunately you hear a lot from me and Herve because we have stable internet connection, as I'm sure a lot of you will know that can be a real challenge. So Bismarck and Asenath suffer a little bit with the internet connection from Kenya and Ghana, but his internet is good. So let's hear from Bismarck.
Hi. Okay. Thankfully, the internet is stable right about now. Yes. So thank you to Theresa and Geetha for sharing all of these insights with us. Yes, I think that it has been what the title said, lessons from international phenology networks. And I think part of the take home for us here is really one of the reasons why we have this project running, to have protocols that are standardized, that can be used across the continent. And what I have picked from both presentations is that those protocols must be clear. They also have to be rigorous to ensure that information that we are getting is accurate. And again, they also have to be simple and adaptable. And I was happy to learn as young as 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds are part of the those sending information in SeasonWatch India. And I think that is something very wonderful, so that we can encourage people of different age groups and backgrounds to really contribute in this. And I think the other very important element is in keeping in mind the usefulness of this data that is being collected.
I think we're about good to get going. It's wonderful to see so many of you here. Thank you so much for coming along.
Yeah.
Welcome
because,
to
Aaron, it's something
on phenology
have I just
that's not coming from mine, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Thankfully it has stopped, because sometimes we scientists just want to go out and study things for the sake of it. When it comes to phenology, where we want to involve citizens, then we have to really look at the end user in mind, right? And try to see the usefulness. And so I like the idea of products, data products, predictions, forecast, and letting people know what is coming up because of information that has been documented. And ecological forecasting, that is one of the areas where the African Phenology Network wants to get into. And the brilliant scenario where farmers have information on when invasives become more problematic, and so they can go ahead and deal with such problems, then we can really see usefulness. And from SeasonWatch India, we also realize the focus on fruit trees and culturally relevant trees and things that people use every day. I think that is also very important to mobilize people around phenology projects. So those are some of the takeaways from here that we are trying to see how best we can put all of this together and incorporate into our work at the African Phenology Network. It's been excellent from Theresa and Geetha, and we are very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm so sorry, Bismarck. I was preparing a link to put in the Zoom chat and it opened up Aaron pre-recorded on YouTube. So very sorry for interrupting you there, but
no problem.
will just share my screen now to just share a couple of things that people can do going away from here. So what next? You can keep in touch with us by joining our mailing list, and I think Aaron will follow up this workshop with an email to you all with instructions of how to do that, or by following us on Twitter, whichever is the best way for you to keep in touch. And I've put our Twitter link in the Zoom chat now, so you could follow that. You could watch our last workshop. It was recorded and it's on YouTube, so you heard a tiny snippet of it. You can go and watch that, and this one will also be recorded, so if you want to watch this back or share it with anyone, then we'll let you know when that's live. If you are involved in phenology monitoring on the African continent and you're not currently represented on the African Phenology Network website, then please get in touch with us for how to share information on your programme. So as part of this COP26 project, we are trying to assess capacity for phenological monitoring, and we really want to hear from people who have experience of the research context in African nations. So I think I put in the chat the link to the survey that we are running live right now. And the survey is in both English and French. So please follow the appropriate link, and please share that with your networks if you have a good African research network. We really want to hear from as many people as possible to inform the recommendations that we come up with. We are planning 2 further workshops. They won't be presentation style. They will be more, we'll be presenting some of the results of some of the work that we've been doing from the survey and from piloting some new data methods, but they will be slightly more discursive. So we'll be thinking how best to do that. But we will advertise, they'll be coming up end of August, beginning of September will be the first one. I guess if you're, nominate yourself as a national representative if you're not currently, your country isn't represented on the steering group. So we're currently representing Ghana, Kenya and Gabon. But if you're from another African country, we'd love to hear from you to help grow our network in your country. So get in touch. And yeah, we've just come up with Mango Watch. So if you are genuinely interested in taking that forward, it would be really great to hear from you. And maybe we could form a group of people who might want to develop that, maybe develop a funding idea or proposal, something that we could work on together. Right, I'm just catching up on the chat to make sure I haven't missed anything. Yeah, so if you're going to leave us now, please take that link to the survey if you have any knowledge of or experience of African research context. We really want to hear from you. If you need to leave now, then that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to stick around for a further 5-10 minutes if anybody wants to discuss anything else going forward. Geetha and Theresa, I appreciate you might need to go, but if you're able to stay, then please do. Thanks to everyone for coming. I'll just give a moment for people to leave.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Great to meet you all.
It's been very nice. Thank you for coming, everyone.